The airport terminal buzzed with cold indifference. But for Eli Carter, it was a guillotine. His mother's final words, "You're too gay for this family," cut deeper than the Seattle rain pelting the tarmac outside. At 24, with his sketchbook clutched like a lifeline, Eli stood alone at Seattle-Tacoma, abandoned by the woman who'd raised him, her suitcase vanishing into the crowd like a verdict. Eli's heart pounded, each beat a mix of betrayal and freedom. He'd come out to her just 2 days ago, hoping love would outweigh her rigid beliefs. Instead, she'd left him here, his duffel bag at his feet, his future a blank page. The terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, amplifying his isolation. He sank onto a bench, his wiry frame trembling, dark curls falling into his eyes as he tried to process the unraveling of his world. He wasn't just alone, he was erased. Then, a wet nose nudged his hand. Eli flinched, looking down to see a scruffy golden retriever, its fur matted but its eyes warm with curiosity. The dog's collar was worn, a small metal tag glinting faintly. "Hey, buddy," Eli whispered, his voice cracking. The dog tilted its head, as if it understood the weight of his grief. Around them, travelers rushed by, oblivious to the boy and the stray who'd found each other in the chaos. Eli reached for the tag, his artist's fingers tracing the engraved words. "Return to 1423 Pine Street, Seattle. Reward. No name, no phone number, just an address and a promise." He glanced at his phone, battery at 5%, and typed the address into a map. It was a 20-minute walk. Something about the dog's steady gaze made Eli feel less adrift, like this chance encounter wasn't random. He stood, slinging his bag over his shoulder. "All right, let's find your home," he said, half to the dog, half to himself. Seattle's streets were alive with early evening energy as Eli and the dog weaved through Capitol Hill. Neon signs glowed above quirky cafes, and pride flags fluttered in the breeze, a stark contrast to the rejection still burning in Eli's chest. He'd grown up in a conservative suburb outside the city, where being himself felt like a crime. Coming out to his mom had been his leap toward freedom, but her abandonment was a brutal reminder of the cost. The dog, whom Eli started calling Rusty for its reddish-gold fur, trotted beside him, its presence a quiet comfort. At 1423 Pine Street, a narrow townhouse stood, its facade painted a bold teal. A small rainbow sticker clung to the mailbox, faded but defiant. Eli hesitated, then knocked. The door creaked open, revealing a man in his mid-20s, broad-shouldered with a kind smile that faltered when he saw the dog. "Oh my God, Scout," he said, crouching to ruffle the dog's ears. His name was Mateo Vargas, 26, a physical therapist with a warmth that seemed to radiate. His dark eyes flicked to Eli, taking in his disheveled appearance. "You found him. Where was he?" "Seattle-Tacoma," Eli said, voice low. "I didn't know where else to go." The words slipped out raw and unintended. Mateo's brow furrowed, sensing the weight behind them. He invited Eli inside, offering coffee and a chance to charge his phone. The living room was cozy, cluttered with books and plants, a stark contrast to the sterile airport. Scout curled up by the couch, watching them both. Over coffee, Eli's story spilled out, his coming out, his mother's rejection, the airport. Mateo listened, his expression a mix of empathy and quiet anger. "That's not family," he said finally. "Family doesn't leave you behind." His words hit Eli like a lifeline. Mateo shared his own story. Raised in a tight-knit Puerto Rican family, he'd faced his own struggles coming out but found a chosen family in Seattle's vibrant queer community. "You're not alone here," he said, his voice steady. "You've got Scout, for starters." Eli laughed, a small, broken sound, but it was the first time he'd felt lighter all day. Mateo offered him the couch for the night, and though Eli hesitated, The thought of facing the city alone was too much. As he lay awake that night, Scout snoring softly nearby, Eli felt a flicker of hope. The dog had led him here, to this stranger who already felt less like one. But the tag's promise of a reward nagged at him. What was it? And why did Scout keep looking at him like he knew something Eli didn't? The next morning, Mateo insisted on making breakfast, pancakes with too much syrup, a messy gesture that made Eli smile. They talked for hours, about art, family, and the city's hidden gems. Mateo's easy laugh and steady presence chipped away at Eli's guarded heart. But when Mateo mentioned Scout's history, how he'd been his late brother's dog, lost after a car accident, Eli sensed there was more to the story. The tag's address was all that remained of a life cut short, and Scout's return felt like a message neither of them could yet decipher. By noon, Eli felt a pull to stay, to learn more about Mateo, Scout, and the truth buried in that tag. But his mother's words echoed, a reminder of his unworthiness. Could he trust this new connection? Or was it just another fleeting moment before the world pulled the rug out again? Eli woke to the smell of coffee and the soft thud of Scout's tail against the hardwood floor. Mateo's townhouse felt like a sanctuary, its walls lined with photos of laughing friends and family, a stark contrast to the sterile silence of his mother's home. But the warmth couldn't erase the ache in Eli's chest. His mother's rejection was a wound that pulsed with every quiet moment. Mateo, in a faded Seahawks hoodie, handed Eli a mug. "You sleep okay?" he asked, his voice gentle but searching. Eli nodded, though the truth was he'd barely slept, haunted by the airport's fluorescent glare and his mother's cold eyes. He wanted to ask about Scout's tag, about the reward, but the words felt too heavy. Instead, he sipped the coffee, letting its bitterness ground him. Mateo suggested a walk to clear their heads. Seattle's streets were crisp with autumn, leaves crunching underfoot as they headed to Volunteer Park with Scout trotting ahead. Eli noticed how Mateo moved with purpose, his athletic frame at ease in the world, while Eli felt like he was still learning how to exist in his own skin. At 24, he'd spent years hiding his truth, sketching in secret to escape his mother's judgment. Now, with nothing but his duffel and his art, he felt exposed. In the park, Scout bounded toward a cherry blossom tree, its branches bare but striking against the gray sky. Mateo laughed, recounting how Scout used to chase squirrels here with his brother, Javier. "He was 22 when he passed," Mateo said, his voice catching. "Car accident 2 years ago. Scout was with him. Took months to find him after." Eli's heart sank, sensing the depth of Mateo's loss. The dog's return wasn't just a miracle. It was a tether to a past Mateo couldn't reclaim. They sat on a bench, Scout sprawled at their feet. Eli pulled out his sketchbook, his fingers itching to capture the moment. The tree's stark beauty, Mateo's quiet strength, Scout's watchful eyes. As he sketched, Mateo leaned closer, his shoulder brushing Eli's. The contact was electric, a spark of connection that made Eli's breath hitch. "You're good," Mateo said, peering at the drawing. "You see things most people miss." Eli blushed and used to praise. He wanted to confess how Mateo's kindness was unraveling him, how it felt both safe and terrifying. Instead, he asked about the tag. Mateo's expression shifted, a mix of hesitation and resolve. "Javier left a letter," he said. "It's the reward, I think. He wrote it before he died, said it was for whoever found Scout. I haven't opened it. Felt too final." The weight of that unopened letter hung between them. Eli wondered what truth it held, why Scout had found him. Mateo's hand rested near his on the bench, close enough to feel the warmth. For a moment, Eli imagined reaching out, but fear held him back. His mother's voice whispered, "Too gay, too wrong." Yet Mateo's presence was a counterpoint, a quiet insistence that Eli was enough. That evening, back at the townhouse, Mateo cooked dinner. Spicy arroz con pollo that reminded him of his abuela. They ate on the couch, Scout begging for scraps, and the ease of it all made Eli ache for something he couldn't name. Mateo shared stories of Javier's dreams, how he'd wanted to open a community center for queer youth, a safe space for those rejected like Eli had been. "He'd have liked you," Mateo said, his eyes soft. Eli's heart raced, caught between grief for a stranger and a growing pull toward Mateo. As night fell, Mateo pulled out the letter, sealed in a worn envelope with Javier's handwriting. "Maybe it's time," he said, voice low. Eli nodded, sensing this was more than a reward, it was a turning point. They agreed to open it together the next day, after visiting Javier's favorite spot in the city. Eli lay awake that night, Scout curled beside him, wondering if the letter held answers not just for Mateo, but for him too. Could he find a place in this world, or would his mother's rejection define him forever? The morning light filtered through Mateo's kitchen, casting soft shadows as Eli gripped his coffee mug. Today, they'd open Javier's letter, but first, Mateo wanted to take Eli to Pike Place Market, Javier's favorite haunt. He said it was where Seattle's heart beat, Mateo explained, his smile bittersweet. Eli felt a nervous thrill, not just for the letter, but for the way Mateo's presence made him feel seen. At the market, the air buzzed with vendors calling out, fish flying, and the scent of fresh bread. Scout wagged his tail, drawing smiles from passers-by. Eli sketched the chaos, his pencil capturing a flower seller's vibrant stall, a busker's soulful melody. Mateo watched, his gaze lingering longer than necessary, and Eli's cheeks warmed. He wasn't used to being noticed, not like this. His mother had always looked through him, seeing only the son she wanted, not the one he was. They stopped at a quiet overlook, the Puget Sound shimmering below. Mateo's hand brushed Eli's as he pointed out a ferry gliding across the water. The touch lingered, intentional yet tentative, and Eli's heart stuttered. He wanted to lean into it, to let this moment rewrite the pain of the airport, but doubt clawed at him. What if Mateo was just being kind? What if Eli's brokenness was too much? Back at the townhouse, they sat at the kitchen table, Javier's letter between them. Scout lay nearby, his eyes fixed on the envelope as if he knew its weight. Mateo's fingers trembled as he broke the seal, pulling out a single sheet of paper. He read aloud, his voice thick. "To whoever finds Scout, you're part of his story now. He's a gift, like love is. Don't let fear stop you from living your truth. I didn't even when it was hard. Take care of him and let him take care of you. Javier." The words hit Eli like a wave. Javier's courage, his unapologetic embrace of his identity, mirrored the life Eli wanted but feared. Mateo's eyes glistened, and he reached for Eli's hand, this time holding it firmly. "He's talking to you too," Mateo said. "You're not alone in this." Eli's throat tightened, his fingers curling around Mateo's. For the first time, he felt anchored, not adrift. That night, they walked to a nearby bar hosting a queer open mic. Mateo's friends welcomed Eli warmly, their laughter and stories wrapping him in a sense of belonging he'd never known. He shared a sketch, a quick drawing of Scout under the cherry blossoms, and the applause felt like a bomb. Mateo's proud smile was even better. As they walked home, their shoulders brushing, Eli felt a spark of courage. He stopped under a streetlight, turning to Mateo. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, voice raw. "Be myself, I mean." Mateo stepped closer, his breath visible in the cool night air. "You're already doing it," he said, his hand grazing Eli's cheek. The moment stretched, fragile and electric, until Mateo leaned in, their lips meeting in a soft, tentative kiss. Eli's world tilted, not with fear, but with possibility. For the first time, he felt like he could belong to this city, to Mateo, to himself. But as they pulled apart, Eli's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Come home. We need to talk." His heart sank, the warmth of the kiss warring with the dread of her words. What did she want now? And could he face her without losing the fragile hope he'd just found? Eli stared at the text, his mother's words a cold fist around his heart. "Come home. We need to talk." He hadn't heard from her since the airport, and now, just as he was starting to feel whole, she was pulling him back. Mateo noticed his tension, his hand resting gently on Eli's shoulder. "You okay?" he asked, his voice a steady anchor. Eli showed him the text. Mateo's jaw tightened, but he didn't push. "You don't owe her anything," he said softly. "But if you go, I'm here. Scout's here." The dog, lying nearby, thumped his tail as if in agreement. Eli nodded, torn between the safety of Mateo's world and the unresolved pain of his mother's rejection. He decided to meet her, if only to prove he could face her and walk away whole. The next day, Eli took a bus to his childhood home in Bellevue, a sterile suburb that felt like a cage. His mother, Karen, opened the door, her face a mask of strained politeness. At 50, she was all sharp edges, perfectly styled hair, a pressed blouse, and eyes that refused to meet his. "Eli," she said, her voice clipped, "sit down." The living room was unchanged, a shrine to a life Eli no longer fit into. Karen didn't apologize for the airport. Instead, she launched into a lecture about family values, her church, and how Eli's choice was tearing them apart. "You can still fix this," she said, her tone pleading but firm. "Therapy, church, there's a program." Eli's stomach churned. Conversion therapy. The words were a slap, but they also clarified something. She didn't want him. She wanted a version of him that didn't exist. "I'm not broken," Eli said, his voice shaking but resolute. "I'm gay, Mom. That's not changing." For the first time, he felt the truth of those words, bolstered by Mateo's warmth, Javier's letter, and Scout's quiet loyalty. Karen's face hardened, and she told him to leave. As he walked away, duffel bag in hand, he felt a strange relief. He was done trying to be her son. Back in Seattle, Mateo was waiting at a coffee shop near his place, Scout at his side. Eli collapsed into a chair, recounting the visit. Mateo listened, his hand covering Eli's, grounding him. "You're braver than you know," Mateo said, his eyes fierce with pride. Eli felt a rush of gratitude, but also a question. What now? He had no home, no family. Only Mateo, Scout, and a sketchbook full of dreams. That evening, they attended a fundraiser for Javier's dream, the Queer Youth Center. Eli volunteered to sketch portraits for donations, his art drawing a crowd. Mateo worked the room, his charisma infectious, and Eli watched him with a mix of awe and longing. As the night wound down, they danced to a slow song, bodies close, the world fading away. Eli's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a certainty that this Mateo, Scout, this community was his future. But as they left, a stranger approached, an older man with a kind face. "You found Scout," he said, his voice heavy. "I knew Javier. There's something you need to know about that letter." Eli and Mateo exchanged a glance, the weight of the unknown settling over them. What truth was still hidden, and how would it change the fragile life they were building? The stranger's name was Daniel, a former mentor of Javier's. Over coffee the next morning, he revealed the truth behind the letter. Javier had been working on a project before his death. A series of letters, not just for Scout's finder, but for others in the community, meant to inspire courage and connection. He hid them, Daniel said, in places tied to his life. Scout's tag was the first clue. Eli's pulse quickened. The dog hadn't just found him. It had chosen him for a purpose. Daniel handed them a map, marked with locations across Seattle. Parks, cafes, bookstores, where Javier's letters were hidden. He wanted to leave a legacy, Daniel said. A reminder that love wins, no matter what. Mateo's eyes shone with determination. We'll find them, he said, squeezing Eli's hand. For Javier. For us. Over the next week, Eli and Mateo became detectives of the heart, chasing Javier's clues with Scout in tow. Each letter they found was a piece of Javier's soul, stories of his struggles, his triumphs, his unyielding belief in love. One was tucked in a bookstore's poetry section, another under a park bench. Each one deepened Eli's connection to Mateo, their shared mission weaving their lives together. Eli's sketches captured each moment, their laughter, their quiet talks, Scout's joyful bounds. One evening, under the cherry blossoms in Volunteer Park, they found the final letter. It was addressed to Mateo. Brother, you're stronger than you know. It read, keep loving, keep fighting. Whoever's with you now, they're family. Build the center. Make it home. Mateo broke down, tears streaming as Eli held him. Scout pressed close, a silent witness to their healing. Inspired, Eli and Mateo threw themselves into making Javier's dream real. Eli's art became the center's heart, his murals adorning its walls, while Mateo rallied the community. They named it Scout's Haven, a safe space for queer youth like Eli, who'd been cast out but found their way back. Opening day was a blur of joy, music, laughter, and stories of resilience. Eli stood in the crowd, Mateo's arm around him, feeling not just accepted, but celebrated. As the sun set, they sat on their bench, Scout at their feet. Eli leaned into Mateo, their fingers intertwined. I was lost, Eli said, voice soft. You and Scout, you found me. Mateo kissed him, slow and sure, the world falling away. The pain of his mother's rejection hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined him. He'd found a home, not in a place, but in Mateo, in Scout, in the family they'd built. Javier's letters had led them here, a truth hidden in a dog's tag. Love was the reward, the courage to live authentically, the ultimate victory. Eli looked at the stars above Seattle, his sketchbook full, his heart fuller. He was no longer the boy left at the airport. He was home,